Do you remember the excitement of Saturday mornings as a kid? The smell of sugary cereal, the glow of the TV screen, and the unbeatable lineup of Kids WB cartoons. For many of us, one show stood out. A show that combined humor, action, and heart. Static Shock. With his electromagnetic powers, witty comebacks, and relatable teenage struggles, Static quickly became a fan favorite. He wasn't just another superhero, he was a cultural phenomenon. But then, just as quickly as he arrived, he was gone. The show ended, the comics disappeared from shelves, and for years, Static Shock was reduced to a memory. Today we're diving deep into the mystery of what really happened to Static Shock. Why did he disappear? What went on behind the scenes? And, most importantly, could we see him make a grand return? Let's get into it. Before Static Shock was electrifying TV screens, he was making waves in the comic book world. His story begins in 1993, during a time when the superhero landscape looked very, well, let's just say monochromatic. The big names in comics, Marvel and DC, were dominating the market, but their characters lacked diversity. Sure, there were a few exceptions, but they often felt like afterthoughts. Enter Milestone Media, a company founded by Dwayne McDuffie, Dennis Cowan, Michael Davis, and Derek T. Dingle. Milestone Media wasn't just another comic book company, it was a revolution. These four black creators saw a glaring problem: the lack of authentic representation in comics. Their mission was simple but ambitious: create a universe where people of color weren't sidekicks or stereotypes, but heroes. One of their standout creations was Static, also known as Virgil Hawkins. Named after a real-life historical figure who fought for civil rights and education, Virgil was a geeky teenager living in Dakota City. He wasn't born with powers. He got them during the Big Bang, a chemical explosion that gave him electromagnetic abilities. Static was different from other heroes. He wasn't a billionaire playboy or an alien from another planet. He was a kid with homework, a curfew, and a complicated social life. His struggles, both as a hero and a teenager, made him incredibly relatable. Milestone didn't just create characters, they created stories that felt real. Virgil's journey wasn't just about fighting villains. It was about navigating the challenges of growing up in a world that often underestimated him. By the late 1990s, Static's popularity caught the attention of Warner Brothers Animation. They saw potential in bringing this teenage superhero to life on the small screen. In 2000, Static Shock premiered on Kids WB. The show was an instant hit, not just because of its action-packed episodes, but because of its heart. What made Static Shock unique was its willingness to address real-world issues. While other superhero shows focus solely on battling villains, Static Shock tackled topics like racism, gun violence, bullying, and even homelessness. One particularly memorable episode dealt with gun violence. Virgil's friend is accidentally shot, forcing him to confront the realities of weapons in his community. In another episode, Virgil faces racism from the father of one of his friends. These weren't just bold choices for a kids' show, they were groundbreaking. And let's not forget the humor. Static wasn't your typical brooding superhero. He was sarcastic, witty, and full of personality. His banter with his best friend Richie, who later becomes Gear, gave the show a fun, dynamic energy. But despite its success, 4 seasons, Daytime Emmy nominations, and a loyal fan base, Static Shock came to an abrupt end in 2004. So why was Static Shock canceled? It wasn't due to a lack of viewers. In fact, the show was one of Kids WB's most popular series. The real reasons were far more complex. First, let's talk about the shifting landscape of children's television. By the early 2000s, cable networks like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon were dominating the market. Traditional Saturday morning cartoons were losing their foothold. Networks like Kids WB struggled to compete, and many shows, including Static Shock, became casualties of this transition. Second, there were challenges with toy sales. In the early 2000s, merchandise played a massive role in determining the success of a show. While Static Shock was beloved by fans, it didn't generate the kind of toy sales that networks were hoping for. Finally, there were budget constraints. Animation, especially the kind that brought Static's electrifying powers to life, wasn't cheap. As network priorities shifted, funding for Static Shock dried up. While Static Shock broke barriers during its 4-season run, fans may be surprised to learn that not every idea the creators had for the series made it to the screen. Behind the scenes, a treasure trove of unproduced scripts and concepts exists. Ideas that, if realized, could have added even more depth and excitement to Virgil's story. One of the most talked about unproduced ideas involved exploring Virgil's relationship with his sister, Sharon. Although Sharon frequently appeared in the series as a grounding figure and occasional comic relief, her character had potential for deeper development. Early notes from the writers hinted at an arc where Sharon discovers Virgil's secret identity as Static, leading to moments of tension, family drama, and eventual growth in their sibling bond. This storyline would have highlighted the sacrifices Virgil made as a hero, and how his dual life affected those closest to him. Another scrapped idea involves Static facing a tech-savvy villain inspired by the rise of the internet and digital culture. Tentatively titled Cybervault, this villain was envisioned as a rogue hacker who could manipulate electronics, hack into databases, and control systems with the same ease that Static controlled electricity. The idea was ahead of its time, reflecting the early 2000s growing fascination and fear of the digital world. Such an antagonist would have offered a thrilling clash of powers, while allowing the show to comment on the dangers of cybercrime and online identity theft. Additionally, unproduced scripts hinted at more team-ups with DC characters. One notable pitch involved a crossover episode with the Teen Titans, where Static would work alongside Robin, Starfire, and the rest of the team. This collaboration could have explored the challenges of teamwork and showcased Virgil's growth as a leader among young heroes. Unfortunately, these plans were shelved due to scheduling conflicts and the challenges of coordinating storylines across multiple series. Lastly, there were discussions about creating an extended arc that delved deeper into Gear's character. While Richie Foley's transformation into Gear was celebrated, his journey as a hero often played second fiddle to Virgil's. An unproduced storyline would have centered on Richie grappling with feelings of inadequacy, questioning whether he belonged in the superhero world alongside Static. This arc would have allowed the show to explore themes of friendship, loyalty, and self-worth, resonating deeply with fans who saw themselves in Richie's struggles. While these unproduced ideas remain unrealized, they represent the boundless creativity of Static Shock's creators. They also serve as a reminder of what could have been. For Milestone, the challenges were even greater. Despite their groundbreaking work, they often found themselves overshadowed by larger companies. Their innovative partnership with DC Comics, which allowed them to retain creative control while DC handled distribution, began to strain under financial pressure. By the late 1990s, Milestone stopped publishing new comics. Static and the rest of the Dakotaverse heroes were left in limbo. Adding to the complications were legal disputes over character rights and royalties. These disputes further delayed any plans for a Static Shock revival. And then, in 2011, tragedy struck. Dwayne McDuffie, one of Milestone's co-founders and the creative force behind Static Shock, passed away unexpectedly. McDuffie's death was a devastating blow to fans and creators alike. Dwayne McDuffie was the heart and soul of Static Shock. As one of the co-founders of Milestone Comics, McDuffie was passionate about creating diverse, authentic characters. His work on Static Shock reflected that passion, delivering stories that were as thoughtful as they were entertaining. But McDuffie's contributions didn't end with Static. He went on to write and produce for shows like Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, where his storytelling brilliance continued to shine. He brought the same depth and complexity to these series, exploring themes of morality, sacrifice, and teamwork. McDuffie's legacy extends far beyond the characters he created. He paved the way for future creators to tell diverse stories, proving that superhero media could be meaningful and inclusive. For years, it seemed like Static was destined to remain a fond memory. But in 2020, everything changed. DC Comics announced the relaunch of Milestone Media, now called Milestone Returns. This wasn't just a nostalgic reboot. It was a bold reimagining for a new generation. Static's origin story was updated, and his adventures were brought into the modern era. And then came the big news. Michael B. Jordan, the Hollywood heavyweight behind Creed and Black Panther, announced that he would be producing a live-action Static Shock movie. While details about the movie are still under wraps, the announcement sent shockwaves through the fandom. Could this be the moment that Static finally gets the recognition he deserves? When Milestone Media created Static, they weren't just creating a character, they were creating a movement. Static represented the idea that anyone, regardless of their background, could be a hero. His stories tackled issues that many superhero narratives avoided. From systemic racism to mental health, Static's journey was about more than just saving the day. It was about navigating the complexities of life as a young black teenager in America. In a media landscape that still struggles with representation, Static's legacy feels more important than ever. So what really happened to Static Shock? He didn't disappear. He was waiting for the world to realize how much we need heroes like him. With the revival of Milestone Media, new comics, and a potential live-action movie on the horizon, it feels like Static's story is far from over. Until then, let's keep his legacy alive. Share his story, revisit the old episodes, and remind the world why Static Shock mattered then, and why he matters now. What's your favorite Static Shock memory? Are you excited for his return? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.